How to destroy your fixed mindset. This video is for anyone who is struggling with self-belief in something that they're working on. They keep doubting themselves. They're wondering if the goal is actually going to pay off. And this is an extremely important video for that kind of person, which is probably you, because any second you spend doubting yourself and not believing in yourself, whilst that's totally normal these days, is actually costing you success. And I'm going to explain how that works in this video. So you probably have what's called a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset, you probably already know the definition as well. It's basically where you believe your skills and your knowledge are fixed. And believe is probably the wrong word, because believe suggests more of like a logical sort of agreement. You don't really logically agree with the fact that your skills and knowledge are fixed. It's more of an emotional belief. So it's more like you feel that your skills and knowledge are fixed. And because you feel that your skills, basically that means that whatever goal you're working on, you essentially feel that you can't improve in it. Because you believe that, you see effort as a waste of time, and you feel that you can't improve. And you also feel that when you do see someone who has the goal that you're working towards, you feel that it's genetics, luck, secret/cheat codes, etc. All of the things you would imagine someone feels when they don't think they can actually achieve something. So what I want you to understand is that this is not a curse that you have to stay with for the rest of your life. It's actually a mentality that you can change, because it's built on 3 distinct handbrakes, and that's what we're going to break down in this video. And the problem that I see, because I do consume a lot of this content, and I see a lot of people make guides to fixing your mindset, and they like explain to you, oh, you can achieve anything, and it's like, yeah, that doesn't really work. And the reason that doesn't work is because of the first thing I said, which is that it's not so much a belief, it's more of a feeling, right? Obviously, if I tell you, you can learn a language or you can write a book, you logically know that to be true. The problem is that we're still emotional animals, right? And so when you're going to the gym, for example, and you feel like shit because maybe you look a little bit worse today, and you don't believe in yourself, you're not logically, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not logically deciding, oh yeah, because I haven't gained enough, muscle, I must give up because it's not going to work. It's sort of a really negative feeling that you get, and that emotion makes you stop. And that's what I want to address in this video, because I just haven't seen enough people do it. So if that sounds like a kind of a problem you're going through, where you just feel self-doubt and you just feel kind of bad and sick inside and intimidated by other people, this is the video for you. This is what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk about the alternative to a fixed mindset first, which is a growth mindset. I just think it's important to have the goal in mind. We're going to talk about handbrakes. Handbrakes are basically there's 3 of them, the things that are causing you to have a fixed mindset and how you can tactically get rid of them. I'm not going to give you a bunch of vague principles that don't really make sense. I'm not going to tell you to rub crystals or anything. I'm going to tell you the actual things that are stopping you from having a growth mindset that I've conquered and that you can as well. And I'm also going to show you how to build a growth mindset. Before we go any further, I know a lot of you guys that watch my videos haven't actually hit the subscribe button yet, and I would really appreciate that, because that's one of my goals, and by watching these videos and hitting the subscribe button, you're actually helping me achieve my goals as well. So first of all, what is the actual alternative to a fixed mindset? Well, obviously a growth mindset, and this, you're probably looking at this like, yeah, I already knew that. Here's what you probably didn't know. If I asked you to tell me what a growth mindset was, you'd probably say something like, believing that change is possible. And that's true, because a fixed mindset obviously is you believe change is fixed, so a growth mindset is you believe change is possible. But there is actually a problem with that. I want to reframe what a growth mindset is, because thinking that change is possible in the age of content consumption and being, you scroll through TikTok and you're shown 15 to 30 people who have like insane results. Like you see like 19-year-olds with $20 million. You see people that are claiming natural, but they're obviously on steroids. You know how it is, right? So just seeing the growth mindset as progress is possible isn't enough, because within the realm of possible, there's still you could still fail, right? So say you're training in the gym and you know that progress is possible, right? That doesn't really stop you from feeling bad when you go onto social media and you see someone who's in fantastic shape that you don't think you're going to get in, which we'll talk more about later. So what I want you to see a growth mindset as from now on isn't that progress is possible. I need you to see it as progress is inevitable. And a saying that I like to say a lot, which fans of my main channel, which I've linked in the description, will know, is I like to use the phrase speed, not if. And it sounds grammatically wrong, but it is actually a really good thing to tell yourself. When I say speed and not if, what I mean is when you're working towards a goal, you should not have the mentality that I might achieve this stuff. You should not have the progress is possible mentality. It should be a question of speed. You should already know that the future you has achieved your goal. So let's say you're writing a book, for example, because that's something I'm doing right now. The person with the sort of old-fashioned view of a growth mindset would tell themselves, oh, you know, anything is possible. Like I can do this. Like if I continue working on the book, it's possible. That's actually not the best mentality you can have. The best mentality you can have is to tell yourself that you've already achieved success in the future. You've already achieved your goals in the future. It's not a question of if you can pull it off. It's a question of speed. And I apply that mentality in every single area of my life. I sort of remove failure as an option. And what that does is it sort of, I'm using too many filler words, sorry. What removing failure does, the advantage of that is that I'm no longer worried that what I'm doing isn't going to pay off, because in every single goal you're working towards, right, you are doing some kind of delayed gratification that isn't always enjoyable. And if it didn't pay off, you probably wouldn't do it as much, right? And so whenever you're feeling that, you know, failure is still possible, I might not be successful at this, all of that is providing fertile ground for you to stop working towards your goal. And of course, as you know, when you stop putting effort in, you stop getting results. So change the way you see a growth mindset to progress is inevitable. When you journal on your goals, when you set goals, when you think about your goals, literally remove any, you can actually do this. I want you to manually remove any sort of debate over whether or not you're going to be successful, all right? You have these things called automatic thoughts in your brain, right? Where you just get automatic sort of, you just get little thoughts popping into your brain all day, every day. And I would be willing to bet, if I had to take a stab in the dark, I'd be willing to bet for you a lot of your automatic thoughts are negative. They're telling you that you're not going to be successful in this. They're telling you that you might fail, that you're wasting your time, that this person's better than you, etc. And a lot of that stems from you not having certainty over the future. So I want you, when you journal and when you think about your goals, to tell yourself that progress is inevitable and it's a question of speed. When you put more effort into the gym, or you put more effort into whatever goal you're working towards, all of that is designed to help you achieve that goal faster. It's not designed to help you achieve that goal because you've already done it in the future. That's the mentality I want you to have. So now, let's talk about the actual handbrakes to a growth mindset. These are the things that are causing you to have a fixed mindset. And of course, there's, you know, if you ask ChatGPT, which I didn't do for this video, but if you ask ChatGPT for a list of things giving you a fixed mindset, it would probably give you a list that was like 15 pages long. So these are just the main ones, and because I've personally found once you target these 3 things and you invert them, which we'll talk about on the next slide, that gives you the highest ROI, and that is going to help you destroy a fixed mindset the most. And if by the way, if you're watching to this point in the video and you're kind of a little bit confused about some of the things I've talked about, and you're not really seeing the importance in a growth mindset, I just want you to take a look around yourself at all the people you know in your life, and I just want you to ask yourself the question: would this person believe it in themselves if they had to set an incredibly difficult goal? If this person had to set a goal that would take maybe years to complete, do you think they'd actually believe in themselves? Because the answer for most people, probably including you and definitely including me in the past, was no, they wouldn't believe in themselves. And that's a seriously dangerous mindset to have that's very, very prevalent because of this. And the reason it's dangerous is because when you don't have self-belief, you sort of fall into hopelessness, and that's kind of one of the worst states you can be in. When you don't believe the future is better than the present, you end up falling into degeneracy, and you just do the things that are kind of high dopamine now, they're stimulating now, they're enjoyable now. Like, for example, scrolling on social media, the junk food, the video games, drinking, the list kind of gets worse as you keep going. But when you don't believe in yourself, you just do those things because there's no reason to do the difficult things. And what happens when you do enough of those bad things is not only do you not like yourself because you've disrespected yourself, not only are you less healthy, not only are you addicted to those things, but those things aren't even fun anymore because of a thing called neuroadaptation. Like the person who plays video games all the time or scrolls all the time doesn't get the same kind of dopamine hit as the person who never does it and just does it once because of neuroadaptation. And that's something I talk about in my book, actually, which you can check out in the description if you want. I might have it linked, I'm not sure. But basically, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but we're sort of in a little bit of a hyperstimulation epidemic where people are doing so many bad habits. And I think one of the root causes of that is hopelessness, and one of the root causes of hopelessness is having a fixed mindset, is believing that you can't change, that you can't achieve your goals, and that the future doesn't get better for you. And I know for me personally, if I continued believing that way, I would have never have built like my dream physique. Not yet, I'm still working on it, but I've made a lot of progress. I would never have built a YouTube channel with over 1,000 subscribers. That's my main channel, for example. I would have never, started an online business. I would have never started writing 2 books. I would have never committed to learning my 3rd language, which is what I'm doing now. So just keep that in mind as well. But back to the video. The first thing that is causing you to have a fixed mindset is what I call a lack of evidence. What evidence basically means is proof that you can change yourself with hard work. So think about this, for example. Let's imagine there's someone who's gone to the gym for 10 years and they're in fantastic shape, right? Do you think they have a belief issue when it comes to going to the gym? Do you think they go to the gym and they worry if it's going to pay off at all? No, they don't, because they've done it for 10 years. They have 10 years worth of evidence. Same goes if you take that same person who's gone to the gym for 10 years and they start learning a language, for example. Do you think they would believe in themselves? The answer is maybe a bit, because they've done so much delayed gratification in another field. They might actually have more self-belief than the average person because they've achieved so much. Not quite as much in the gym because they haven't learned a second language before. So there's a little bit of a... It's kind of a meta skill, right? When you're doing difficult things. I know I read the book Ultralearning by Scott Young. I'll link it in the description. But he talks about meta skills, which are basically skills that apply in different areas. One of them is obviously having a growth mindset. So the short answer to that is the person who's gone to the gym for 10 years would probably have more self-belief in learning a language than the average person, but they wouldn't have as much as the person who's already learnt a second language before. And that's extremely important to understand, because that proves that evidence of stuff does actually make you believe in yourself more. And that's a big problem for people, because for most of us who have gone through the school system and we've just had someone running our lives for us, we haven't actually stacked any evidence that we are capable of delayed gratification. Like, think about that, for example. I want you to name right now, you can pause the video, name as many things as you possibly can that you've worked hard on for a period of at least a week and you've seen results in. And it can't be anything within school that you didn't really enjoy and you kind of got forced to because you're going to get a punishment. You probably would struggle to name more than 5 things. Like, I can probably name maybe 10. And I'm a person who's done that a lot. Like, I think I would struggle to name more than 10 things that I put in more than a week's worth of effort in. And that's seriously concerning, because if you think about, you're going to be alive for hopefully 70, 80, 90 years. The fact that you're anywhere from 15 to 30 and you struggle to name things that you've actually put effort in your own time is bad. So lack of evidence is one thing, right? The more you do delayed gratification and the more you stack wins, essentially, the easier it is to have a growth mindset. We're going to talk about why people haven't stacked evidence yet. But a growth mindset is essentially a meta skill you build through stacking evidence. The second reason, and this is a big one, why you have a fixed mindset is because of result worship. So I like to talk about 2 different things: results and processes. Processes are essentially what is required to achieve a goal. So for example, in the gym, the process would be working out, and the result is the desired end goal. So in the gym, again, for example, the result would be getting in fantastic shape or being able to do a certain lift, a certain weight, if you know what I mean. And the problem with people these days with social media as well is that we worship results. So if you scroll through your social media algorithms, you are essentially hyper exposed to extreme results. We talked about this before. You're exposed to millionaires, you're exposed to people who are in incredible shape, and the interesting thing is that the algorithm actually knows you better than you know yourself. So it's just going to continue bombarding you with things that it knows you want to see. And what this kind of does is it almost turns you, this is a bit of a weird term, but I heard someone say this, it almost turns you into like a cuck for goals. Like, instead of a cuck for someone who watches someone else have sex with the person they like, it sort of turns you into a goal cuck, like a spectator, right? And that sounds really weird, but it's actually true. When you're constantly watching people who have your goals, you're essentially vicariously living through them. And what that does is it just scratches the itch, it just keeps you satisfied enough to keep consuming and not actually working on those goals. And 2, it makes you think that working on those goals is useless, because you don't really see those people putting in the years and years of effort it takes to achieve those goals. All you see is the 8 seconds of them flexing and showing it off. And that's really, really bad for your mental health. It's actually been proven. So result worship is another thing. And another bad part of result worship is what I call, not what I call, it's the technical term, upwards comparison. This is a little bit of information overload, but stick with me, right? Upwards comparison is evolutionary. Essentially, imagine you're a caveman, for example, right? And or an animal, and you notice another animal, could be like a saber-toothed tiger or something, and it's very obviously gonna, like, has the capacity to overpower and kill you, right? You're going to be a lot more vigilant and a lot more stressed about that other animal that might kill you than you're going to be about a bug, right? Nobody would see an ant on the ground and have the same fear response to that as they would if they saw a tiger or a snake, right? You'd have to be mentally ill. And the reason for that is because we've evolved to detect and be vigilant of things that we perceive as better than us, right? And that doesn't just apply to animals, it also applies to people. When we see someone who is better than us or is a potential threat by evolutionary standards, we get anxious and we are more vigilant of that person, right? It's just how we've evolved to be, to survive. All of the people that have survived throughout, thousands and thousands of years ago were very good at this. They were very good at being aware of potential threats. And the problem with social media these days is that you are hyper exposed to people who are better than you at stuff. Like, it's impossible to go on social media and not see people who are just better than you in every way. A lot of them could be lying, and in fact, a lot of them are. But that's just how the algorithm works, right? And what that does is it puts your brain, you've probably heard that social media gives people anxiety, and it does, because it sort of hijacks your evolutionary, the way your brain has evolved. And it puts you into a state of constant anxiety, and it actually makes you want to come back and consume, because it makes you want to see, you've evolved to want to be vigilant of the people who are better than you. So it actually causes you to come back anxiously and keep consuming social media content. That's why it's wired to be that way, to keep you on those apps. And again, that feeds into a fixed mindset as well. The third handbrake to fixed mindset is just comfort addiction. So I like to talk about push and pull. Pull being, so here's you in the middle, right? Imagine you're here. Over here is comfort. It's pulling you into it, right? It's pulling you towards, the junk food, the video games, the social media. It's trying to keep you complacent. And then over here is the difficult delayed gratification task, the exercise, the reading, etc. And the more difficult that looks, the more it pushes you away towards comfort. So through a combination of push and pull, you're sort of being pulled towards the comfortable stuff and you're being pushed away from the difficult stuff, right? So that's why when people talk about friction, they say there's a lot of friction between them and doing the actual important task. The problem with these days is that comfort is so much more addictive than it ever was before, right? So the video games are way more stimulating, the food is way more stimulating, etc. I'm not going to go into it that much, but you'd probably agree with me that it's way more comfortable living these days than it has been previously. So yeah, those are the three handbrakes to a fixed mindset, and those are the three things that are keeping you locked into a fixed mindset. Now we're going to talk about tactics and how you can actually grow a growth mindset. But before we go any further, I just want to point out another big thing, which is ego. For a lot of people, ego is kind of a controversial word, because some people say it's terrible, some people say it's good and that you should, work to justify an ego. I kind of tend to be a little bit in the middle. I'm a big believer in being a lifelong student and being humble and always looking to improve yourself and to learn stuff and to seek out people who are better than you and to learn from them. That said, I do think you need to have some level of ambition. If you don't have a level of ambition, you're essentially going nowhere and you're going to end up directionless and hopelessness. So that's kind of my 2 cents on ego. But for a lot of people, beliefs are the laws that govern your reality, right? That's a very, very important thing to remember. What you believe in is essentially going to dictate how you behave. So if you believe that the gym won't pay off, which I've heard people say, if they believe that weight loss doesn't work, which I've also heard people say, they're not going to do it, which means they're never going to lose weight or they're never going to get fit, right? So just be very aware that beliefs are the laws that govern your reality. The reason I've mentioned ego is because for a lot of people, they sort of deep down know that they can achieve something. It's just going to take a lot of work. And so rather than put effort in and fail, or put effort in and have to struggle, they would rather just disqualify themselves from doing that thing. And they would rather say, you know what, I can't achieve this thing because this person's cheating or this person's lying, they're exaggerating on social media, and it's sort of ego protection. They would rather justify to themselves that they can't actually achieve that thing. So that's another important thing to point out. All right, so finally on to building a growth mindset. To build a growth mindset, you essentially need to invert the 3 things we've already talked about. So abundance of evidence, process, worship, and comfort rejection. We're going to do this in reverse order. So the first thing to understand is that comfort keeps you numb. I actually talk about the instant gratification trap in a video. I'll link in the description below. But essentially, when you're doing comfortable things like scrolling on social media, eating junk food, etc., they sort of keep you, it's kind of like they scratch the itch, but in a negative way. They don't fulfill you in the same way goals do, but they keep you just complacent enough to not want to actually work on stuff and to improve yourself. So understand that when you're doing these bad habits, and there's probably one that just popped into your head right now, that's the worst habit you're doing, that is actually keeping you complacent at the moment, and that's making you not want to do things. As soon as you cut that out, it's actually a lot easier to do work and to work on stuff, because you need something to actually fill the void and to keep you fulfilled, essentially. So what a lot of people have is a very, very negative mindset that they can't be uncomfortable. They're very, very avoidant to any kind of discomfort. They think they have to be comfortable, and if they don't enjoy doing something, they can't do it. And that's not true at all. You can actually do things that are uncomfortable. And the good thing with doing things that are uncomfortable, apart from the fact that they can often improve you, is that the more you do them, the more comfortable you become to them. The more, like the person who's gone to the gym 10 years that we mentioned before, finds it easy to train now, not just because they believe in themselves, but because it's literally easier. There's not as much friction anymore because they've done it so much, they become comfortable. So I just, for that first one, I just need you to actually agree with me. Agree with me that difficult things can become easier over time, and agree with me that the things you're doing right now, the bad habits that you're addicted to, don't actually really make you happy. They don't actually scratch the itch in the same way that achieving a purposeful goal would. You just kind of do them out of habit because they give you a bit of dopamine. The next thing to understand is that you need to actually start worshipping process, not worshipping results. And a big thing with that is cutting out social media content. For a lot of people, they are hyper exposed to social media content that is causing them to have a result worship, and that's really not good. So what I want you to do is take steps to actually cut out scrolling on social media. If you check your screen time right now, you'll probably see that you're spending way more time than you actually think on there, and that's really not good at all. So what I'd recommend you do is, if you've got Instagram, TikTok, anything like that, just delete it. I know that probably seems extreme and you're wondering, how can I message people? Just use WhatsApp. If you want to take it a little bit slower, delete TikTok. That's probably the really degenerate one, because I don't even really see a point to that in messaging people. But delete these apps, turn off notifications to them in your phone, turn off touch to wake or raise to wake, which is basically, say your phone is like sitting next to you, right? And as soon as you touch it, or as soon as you pick it up, the screen immediately turns on and shows you all the notifications you might have. Just go into settings and disable that. Like for me, if you watch me, I'm tapping my phone, the screen is not turning on. The only way it will actually turn on is if I push the power button, like I just did. So I think that's a really good tactic to turn on as well, just because if you don't have that on, your phone is just going to be bombarding you with stuff, and even if you don't have it next to you, you're going to be thinking about it because you know that there's stuff that's coming through. So do that. You can turn your phone on grayscale as well. I'd recommend deleting the apps. I don't have TikTok or anything like that. It's just rubbish. Get rid of all that. Then what I recommend you do is you make sure the content that you are watching is process-based. So when I watch stuff on YouTube, or if I'm like subscribed to a few different online courses, obviously the courses are process-based. But when I do watch stuff on YouTube, if I'm at work and I'm got a headphone in, or if I'm driving or something, I will actually listen to a podcast, or I'll listen to something that contributes to my goal. So I'll actually link a few different podcasts and stuff below that I think are actually good for people to watch who are on self-improvement. But essentially, the content you're consuming, it's okay to consume content that is not particularly useful, but it's entertaining. But most of the stuff you're watching shouldn't be just crap. You shouldn't be just swiping through stuff that isn't good for you. You should be watching things that actually help you improve your life. What I'd also recommend is that you plan key tasks into your day. So for me personally, I have a calendar here. You can do it digitally or physically, it's up to you, but I would recommend every day you set a clear goal of something you want to achieve that day, and you write down the things that you're doing to achieve that goal. So for me personally, I write down how many videos I want to record if it's a recording day, and I actually plan when I'm going to do those things. And I make tons of mistakes. I don't always hit those goals. I haven't, especially in the last week or two. But that's okay, because writing it down is better than not doing it at all. And I also think you should try and optimize and enjoy the process as well. So for a lot of people make the mistake of they'll set a goal without really thinking it through, and then they will set key tasks that aren't really enjoyable at all. So for example, they will get the idea in their head that they want to be in better shape, and because they can't really think for themselves and they're just bombarded with social media content, they'll see one clip of someone doing martial arts and I'll decide that that's what they want to do and they don't actually think it through, all of a sudden they've locked themselves into doing martial arts, which is great for you, by the way, but maybe that isn't for them personally. Maybe they would have really enjoyed weightlifting or rock climbing or swimming or something like that. So what I want you to do is grab a pen and paper and actually journal about the goals you want to set. Think about what future, if the version of you 1 year in the future had a voucher to achieve any goal, what would they use it for? And use that sort of mentality to decide what goals you actually want to set, because that's going to be really important for setting authentic goals. Do not set goals that are going to be difficult, that you don't actually, sorry, I almost said for a second, don't set goals that are going to be difficult. That was a slip of the tongue. Don't set goals that you're not actually going to feel fulfilled by achieving. I know, for example, I've done this before where I think I set the goal to get better at pool, which is like, I mean, it's kind of cool, like I'd like to be better, but it was such a stupid goal to set because I don't really care that much. And I thought for a second, if future me could, cash in a voucher to achieve any goal, would I use it for that? And I was like, fuck no, of course not. I would use it for YouTube or something like that. So that told me that that was an inauthentic goal to set, and I got rid of it, right? No shame in that. And the third thing to do is to stack evidence to the moon. This is more of a long-term process, obviously, because you can't just stack tons of evidence on the first day. But what you can do from day one is you can set a habit tracker. I have one on my desk right now. You can stick it to your desk. You can have it digitally on your phone, where you basically have a list of habits that you do every day. It could be journaling, it could be exercise, it could be waking up on time, it could be not checking your phone until 12, anything like that. It's up to you. I actually talk about it in my course, which I have top link in the description. But basically, anything like that, that is like sort of a physical representation of all the work you've done, is going to be really good. For a lot of people, I know they like to have an iPhone notes file in their iPhone notes where they just call it wins, and they write down 3 wins every single day at the end of the day, and they can scroll back through that and see all of the things they've achieved. I think that's also a really good tactic to use as well. But basically, anything that is a representation of all the work you've put in and all the goals you've achieved is, I think, a really good thing to incorporate. So I will link another video in the description below on stacking evidence, or I'll write something down, maybe some tips, actionable steps. But yeah, that is a really important one. And speed, not if. I want to remind you again, do not get into the habit of worrying if a goal is actually going to pay off. I need you to remind yourself, speed, not if. Whenever you get a negative thought towards, maybe this won't pay off, maybe I won't be able to achieve this, just tell that negative thought to shut up. I want you to actually imagine whenever you get a negative thought that is, telling you can't achieve a goal, I want you to imagine that that's someone else, that's someone dragging you down, that's like a deformed version of you that's squealing at you, trying to get you to agree with it, and just laugh at it and tell it to shut up. Because it's not true. You can achieve any goal you want, so there's no reason to not believe in yourself. That's what a habit tracker looks like, by the way. Oh, that's only the top 2 habits I've got written down. Then you can see, of course, that's the date every day, and you tick them off. That's actually in my course, which I have linked below. Here's a few other things in my course as well, modules if you want to check them out. But yeah, your new goal now needs to become the person with an abundance of evidence. So you can see here, these are just a few of the things I've achieved. You can pause it and have a look if you want. But yeah, when you become the person who has an abundance of evidence, that is a meta skill. It is a skill that transfers across different things. So it's actually very easy for me to do difficult shit now and to set difficult goals that are going to take years to complete, just because I have self-belief and I know that I can achieve them. Guys, don't let them win. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.